Hey, what's up everybody? In this video we're going to be talking about creating snippets in .view components, which is actually a little bit complicated, but I think you'll find that when you understand it, it makes a lot of sense the way snippets are handled inside .view components. Now you're probably going to need the View to plugin, and you're also going to need the Snippet Creator plugin in order to follow along with this. You don't need the Snippet Creator plugin, it just makes it really easy to create snippets. So go ahead and install those two plugins. And I've got just a basic View template here. Now, everything inside of template goes within the View-HTML scope. Now, the reason that this isn't a plain HTML snippet is because normal HTML is a little bit different to View HTML. So you'll probably know if you've been using View for a while, you've got things like V-4, and View wants to be able to pick up on that sort of stuff. And so in order for it to work properly, it sort of needs to have its own snippet scope, which is why we've got View-HTML as the scope there, not just HTML. Okay, so not HTML, View-HTML. Cool, moving along. Inside the script tag, this is just going to be plain JavaScript. So since it's plain JavaScript, it sits within the JavaScript scope. And in here, I'm telling View that I want the language to be less, and therefore it's going to sit inside the less scope, okay? Now, you can change this to Stylist. I actually like to use Stylist myself, and in that case, it's going to be inside the Stylist scope. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. View-HTML scope for the template, JavaScript for the script scope, and if you have a different language here, like I think you can say TypeScript or something like that. I don't actually use TypeScript, so I don't know, but it's the same idea. If you're using TypeScript, it would be in the TypeScript scope. Now, there's one little caveat here, one thing that confused me a lot to begin with, and that's that there's another scope here. All these spaces in between are actually their own scope. They're in the View scope. Okay, so if you place anything in the View scope, the snippet will be available in these sections here, but they won't be available inside the template, the script, or the style scope. All right, so let's go ahead and make some snippets. So we're going to start here inside the template scope. Let's just say we have a button. So I like to use the Quasar framework. So let's say I'm using a Q button. It might look something like this, and I'll close it off there. Now, usually when I'm building a snippet, I'm going to select it and Shift Tab and make sure that it's tabbed all the way back. It just means that when you import the snippet, everything lines up with tabbing properly. Now, I'm going to say $0 here, because that means that the snippet is going to put my cursor right here to begin with. So let's select that, Control-Shift-P, and we're going to say Create Snippet. Boom. Now, remember what I was saying before, this is the View-HTML scope. So let's say View-HTML, and now we give the snippet a name. I give the name of the snippet, and so Q button. I usually give the prefix, the name, I give it all the same thing, because I feel like I don't need an explanation for my snippets. But if you feel like you do, you can go ahead and enter something sensical there. So Q button, let's just get rid of this now. Q, BTN, and boom, it works. Now let's go ahead and create a JavaScript snippet. So let's say export default, because that's something that we'll do over and over again inside our .view files. And we're probably going to have props, and we're probably going to have data. And now what you can do is, I'll probably add a comma there as well. You can say $0, meaning that our cursor is going to be here to begin with, so we can write in our props. And then when we press tab, we want to go to here, so we'll say $1. So let's grab that, Control-Shift-P, create snippet. This is going to be a JavaScript snippet. And now I'm not going to call it export or anything like that. We want to be more particular, more specific, because remember, this is covering our .js files as well. So we want to say that this is specific to a View file. So maybe something like View export, something like that. You might be able to come up with a better name. So I'm going to copy that, paste it through, and now let's have a go and see how that works. So we're going to say View export, there it is, and it works. Now notice that we've jumped right down to data. That's because I should have set this to 0. So now we can edit the snippet by going Control-Shift-P, and inside Preferences, configure user snippets. Let's jump in there. And we want to go to the JavaScript snippets for that. So I'm going to scroll down here to that snippet that we just created. And $0 is actually where you end up at the end. So we're going to say 1 there and 0 here. Okay, so let's have a go at that again. View, export, and there we go. We start at props. We can type in a prop. So for example, value, and we might say that that's required. And then when I press tab, it takes me straight down to data, so I can start entering data there. So that's pretty handy. Now we're going to create a Stylist snippet. And it's the exact same process, so let's just go through this quickly. Imagine that we have an indent property that we're using over and over again. Margin left, and maybe set that to 14 pixels. And remember, this is going to throw the snippet into the Stylist scope. So let's just tab that out. Control-Shift-P, create snippet, and Stylist. There we go. So I might call this indent. I'm going to copy that, paste it for all of the values. And now if we type in here indent, it works. Okay, so the last snippet that we're going to create is anything that is outside of the view file. Now let me show you where this is particularly handy. It's particularly handy when we're first creating the scaffold for our .view file. So let's say, for example, we want to have something that's just plain to begin with. Maybe you'd have a div tag in there. You'll see like a lot of generators do this. Something like that. And maybe by default you want to have props and data in there. So let's have that. And then maybe for style, you just want to have nothing at all. I actually don't have style tags at all in my view files by default because I want to discourage myself from using styles too often. I try to keep my styles really consistent and I don't like to attach them to my modules. But anyway, that's something for another day. All right, so what we can do now is select all of this, say Control-Shift-P, create snippet. It's the exact same process, but this time the scope is going to be view. All right, so let's just call this something like maybe default template, because I'm already using the word template, I think, so I don't want any clashes there. There we go. So let's type in default template, and that works. Now let's review. Anything inside the template is in the view-html scope. Anything inside script is in the JavaScript scope. And anything inside style, well, it will depend on the language that you're using. In this case, it's Stylist, whereas if this were less, then it would be less there. And if you have nothing there at all, then it would probably be, I think it's in then the CSS scope, all right? And then anything in between here is going to be in just the plain old view scope. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, share it with a friend, and I'll see you guys in a later video.